In this video, we're going to take a look at how to change eye color in Photopea. This is a really easy technique, and you can get a lot of cool effects using it. This method is non-destructive, so you'll still have access to the original eye color since we'll be using adjustment layers to change the color. Let's get started by dragging and dropping the example image, which you can find in the description, into Photopea to start a new project. We need to zoom in on our subject so we can get a better view of what we're working on. Switch to the zoom tool by clicking the magnifying glass icon in the toolbar, or by pressing the Z key, and click around the eyes to zoom in. If you zoom in too far, you can hold down Alt while clicking to zoom out. Also, if the image gets misaligned, you can hold down the spacebar and drag the canvas to reposition it. Next, we need to make a selection of the eye, just the iris. We can do this in several different ways, but I find the easiest method is to use the Ellipse Select tool, which you can find here on the toolbar, or switch to by pressing M. Since the iris is round, the Ellipse Select tool makes it really easy to get a good selection. Just click on the upper left side and draw out a selection about the size of the iris. You'll probably need to reposition the selection since it's hard to tell where to start from. So what you can do is, while making the selection and still holding the mouse button down, press and hold the spacebar and drag the mouse to reposition the selection. Then release the spacebar and continue drawing your selection. Don't worry about getting it perfect, just get as close as you can. A rough selection is fine here, since we can fix any problem areas later when we convert it into a mask. Notice at the top of the eye, we have some eyelid and lashes selected, which we need to remove from the selection since we don't want them to be affected when we change the color. To do that, we can hold down Alt and Shift while starting to make a selection, and when we release the mouse button, only the areas that are intersecting will remain selected. As long as you hold Alt and Shift while you start the selection, you can release them, and then hold down Space and reposition the selection like we did before. Then, when I let go, only the areas intersecting will remain. By the way, if you find this content useful and would like to help me make more, I have a Patreon page where I'll be posting a PDF version of all my new tutorials. You can find a link in the description. Now, we need to do the same for the other eye. Hold down the spacebar and drag the canvas over until you can see the other eye. If you click the canvas and deselect the eye, you can come over here to the History panel and go back through the history points to where the selection was still made. We need to add to the selection that we already have by selecting this other eye as well. To add to a selection, you just need to hold down Shift when you start making the selection. So, hold down Shift and start dragging to make your selection. At this point, I can let go of Shift, and while still holding the mouse button down, I can hold the spacebar and reposition the selection until it looks right. Release the mouse button to add to the selection. Just like before, we have some area at the top of the eye that we don't want selected. To remove that, we're going to use the lasso tool. Press L to switch to the lasso tool. We need to remove from the selection, which we can do by holding down Alt when we start making the selection. So I'll hold down Alt and start drawing my selection, and just follow along the top of the eye. Remember, we're drawing a selection around what we want to remove, so we'll go around this area and close the selection. From here, we're going to create a group so we can use the same layer mask for multiple adjustment layers. Create a group by clicking the folder icon under the Layers section, and then click on Add Raster Mask, which applies our mask to the entire group. Now we can add multiple adjustment layers inside this group, and they'll all share the same mask, meaning they'll only affect the eyes. Let's start by adding a Hue Saturation adjustment layer to change the color. Click on the New Adjustment Layer icon, and choose Hue Saturation. That adds a Hue Saturation adjustment layer inside of our group, and opens up these options here in the Properties panel. If the Properties panel gets closed down and you need to access it, just double-click on the adjustment layer to reopen it. Here we have 4 options: Hue, Saturation, Lightness, and Colorize. First, we want to check Colorize because we want to add color to our image. We can change the color by dragging the hue slider around. For now, I'll set it to -125 to get a nice blue color. The saturation slider controls how vibrant the color is, and the higher the value, the more intense the color is. For eyes, it's good to keep the saturation low for a more realistic look. For this color, I think 15 looks good for saturation, but you may need to go higher or lower depending on the color you select. Lightness controls the brightness or darkness of the selected area, but it's not the best option to use when coloring eyes because it doesn't give very good results. Since we're not going to be using the hue saturation layer to affect the brightness, let's change the blend mode of the layer to color. The color blend mode only affects the hue and saturation, and it lets a bit more detail come through. To control the brightness of the eyes, the better option is to use a levels adjustment layer. To add a levels adjustment layer, click New Adjustment Layer and select Levels. Now we can adjust these settings here to control the brightness, and we get a much more realistic result. By adjusting the brightness, you can make the color look more natural and highlight the details of the eyes. Experiment with these settings until you get the right look you're going for. If we zoom in on the eyes, you can see that our mask isn't perfect, and it's affecting some of the eyelashes here. Also, it's affecting the pupil, which we don't want either. Cleaning up the layer mask is easy to do. We just need to select the layer mask on the Folder 1 group by clicking on it in the Layers panel. Then switch to the Brush tool by pressing B, and right-click the canvas to bring up the brush properties. We want to set the brush to a small size. I'll go with 8. And we want to lower the hardness all the way down to 0. This way, our brush only affects a small area and it doesn't create any hard lines. With the layer mask, remember that black hides and white reveals. We need to hide the areas that we don't want to be affected. So I'll press X to swap foreground and background colors and switch to black. Then just paint over the areas that you need to hide. I'll cover any areas I missed on the eyelashes, and go over the pupil as well. You also want to cover the reflection in the eye too. Hold down the spacebar and drag the canvas over to the other eye, and do the same over here. If you go too far down into the iris, just click X to swap colors back to white, and paint over the areas that you revealed. The next issue is that the edges of the mask are too sharp, while her actual iris fades out a bit on the edges. For this, we just need to apply a blur to the layer mask. So, with the layer mask selected, go to Filter, Blur, and choose Gaussian Blur. You don't want to go too far, or it will start to wash out the color. You just want to roll off the edges and soften them a bit. Subtlety is important here to get a realistic effect. I'll go with a setting of 4 for this example. You can see how much more realistic it looks with that little bit of fade off. What we have so far looks good, and we've got a pretty natural result. But let's add some more detail to the eyes and make them pop even more. Let's add some highlight around the center of the iris. Add a new adjustment layer, and select Curves. Create a point on the upper half of the line, and drag it way up here to bring up the brightness. Right now, this Curves adjustment layer has a layer mask linked to it, but the mask is all white, letting everything through. We want to block everything out and reveal it just around the pupil. We can hide everything by inverting the layer mask on the Curves adjustment layer by selecting the mask and pressing Ctrl-I to invert the mask. Press B to switch to the Brush tool and paint white onto the layer mask around the pupil to reveal the effect. Again, if you go too far, just press X to swap colors and paint black over the areas you need to hide. Okay, that looks nice. Now we can bring the opacity down a bit and make it look a little more natural. Let's do the same thing, except we'll darken the outer edges of the iris this time. We can use the same method, add an adjustment layer, and choose Curves. This time, drag a point on the bottom half down to darken the eyes. Select the layer mask and press Ctrl-I to invert it. Then, paint white on the mask to reveal the effect around the edges of the iris. And we'll do the same for the other eye. From here, you could lower the opacity as needed to make the darker area blend in better, or we can apply a blur to soften it up. Go to Filter, Blur, and choose Gaussian Blur. I'll go with a setting of 4.3. Let's zoom out and fit the image to the screen by pressing Ctrl-0. If I hide and reveal the detail layers we just created, you can see how much more definition it gives to the eyes and how they stand out better with those added details. Let's take a look at our final results and see what the eyes looked like before and after we've changed their color and added some details. We were able to use a hue saturation adjustment layer to change the color, as well as levels and curves adjustment layers to alter the brightness and add more detail to the eyes. If you found this useful, please like and subscribe for more content, and share this video to anybody who might find it useful. If you have any questions, ask in the comments and I'll try to help you out. Thank you for watching. See you next time.